Well, I watched another old classic Doctor Who episode featuring the first Doctor, William Hartnell. This is the third title in my collection. I only have four. Of course, Unearthly Child and the Daleks being the first two. And now we jump quite a ways ahead, primarily because a lot of old Hartnell episodes are just lost. This one is a pretty straightforward time travel adventure involving a sinister villain who wants to change time. In this case, the events that would have led to the Battle of Hastings in 1066, the last time the British Isles were successfully invaded. But for his own greedy and nefarious ends. And apparently, but not just greedy, there's evidence that he'd been manipulating time all along. But here he thought by manipulating this event, he could change the course of human history for the better. How that was supposed to happen, don't know, but he says that the technology would have advanced faster than it actually did. But what have you, who knows? But the reason the Time Meddler is significant for Doctor Who overall is that this marks the first time the Doctor encounters another member of his race, another Time Lord. Now, they're not called Time Lords at this point, I don't believe, but, you know, little by little, it comes out. It took a long time before they even mentioned Gallifrey. So here we have the monk, and it's because he's disguised as a monk, and he's simply referred to the monk. So I suppose we can derive from this that that's his chosen title, that these rogue Time Lords just they drop their names and take on these titles. So the Doctor's the Doctor, the Master's the Master, so the Monk's the Monk. Now, I suppose some could argue that what if the Monk is actually an earlier incarnation of the Master? But I don't know. I think that would be stretching things a bit. They do appear to recognize one another. Now, whether that's just accidental or not, but when the Doctor and the monk encounter one another within the story, there's not a lot of conversation about where they're from and whatnot. But you can, just by the looks and the body language there in the scenes, you could say, yeah, this all fits in, you know. Obviously, it's not planned at the time. They hadn't come up with all the ideas of the Doctor, his origins and whatnot. But, and still at this moment, I don't know, having not seen a lot of the other episodes of Hartnell, whether or not they actually made mention that he's an alien yet. You know, I mean, you could have jumped to the conclusion that the monk and the Doctor were from some distant future or what have you. But anyway, it doesn't matter. This all fits in, and so this is the first time he encounters another one, and also he has his own TARDIS, and of course it's a superior TARDIS because its chameleon circuit is working. And so that's the cool aspects of it. You see another TARDIS, the Doctor's companions who are relatively new here. There's Vicky and Stephen, who apparently inadvertently stowed away on the TARDIS from the previous adventure, which is also of some significance. Too bad that one's lost, but it was the final episode featuring Barbara and Ian. This is one for a story involving the Daleks, who had their own time machine, and at the end, Barbara and Eden figured the Doctor was never going to figure out how to get them back home, so they just took the Dalek time machine and went back home on their own. So this would be the first adventure with the old crew finally gone, and now it's Doctor and Vicky, of course, is probably reminding him of Susan, and so they're together, and then they find Stephen passed out in the TARDIS. So there you go. That's your new TARDIS crew. So they go off on this adventure. And right off the bat, there's little clues here and there that something's not right. Stephen at first doesn't believe that the TARDIS. He accepts that it's the transcendental dimensions within, and that it can travel through space. But traveling through time, now come on, you got to get up pretty early in the morning to fool old Steve Taylor. So for a while, he's not exactly convinced, and then he thinks the whole thing is fake and that they're not really in 1066. 1066, because at some point he finds a wristwatch on some guy and he says, see, but eventually the reason things are not quite the way they should be is, of course, because of the monk. And so there's interaction with the locals who have no idea what's going on. And eventually the doctor catches on to the monk's plot and is intending to punish him, because this is a violation of the main law that Time Lords are supposed to follow, and that's not to interfere with time. Thanks, buddy. Thanks. Apologies for that. Anyway. And that's exactly what he does. And it's a clever thing where the doctor messes with the monk's TARDIS, and with the transcendental dimension aspect of it, where it shrinks down to like a dollhouse size, to where the monk can't get to his control panel to take off. So he's trapped in 1066 at the end of the show, which is pretty hilarious little trick. So don't mess with the doctor, And there's certain aspects here where the doctor is becoming the doctor here. He's more heroic and more about solving things and putting things right, rather than the kind of selfish guy who just wants to get away from it all and leave well enough alone. Here he's more involved, and he was always curious, and that would get him in trouble. But here it's more of an investigative attitude and of a heroic character. So all good stuff here, and it goes to show there's a lot of complaints, especially nowadays with the current series of Doctor Who, complaining, well, there's just not enough money. There's almost no money in this show, and yet it provides an entertaining narrative. It gives you some insight into, at the time, was the mystery of the Doctor, and who was he and where was he from and all that. And it gives you a little taste of that. And so, and all very simple. They just go back and forth in some areas, but as long as the story's engaging and the characters bring you in, that's all you need. And so this was a fun little story. It's not one of the best ones, I'm sure, but still interesting, and of course significant, just for the fact that you meet the monk, who would later appear in another adventure, and then I think that was it. It would have been interesting had they done different versions of him later, especially in the new series, and might have even suggested that he was someone that was recalled by the Time Lords to help out in the Time War and stuff like that. Maybe they did in Big Finish. I don't know. I haven't gotten to listen to the Big Finish version of the Time War, which I guess is all we're ever going to get about it going forward. But anyway, it's an interesting thing, and of course this wouldn't be the first time. Later on is the War Chief, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. So all around okay show, and of course Hartnell growing in the character, becoming more of a heroic character than he was originally, and not as almost indicating that he was somewhat of a sinister character in those early shows, but none of that now. It was still eccentric and whatnot, but still a fairly good Doctor Who episode. So 4 out of 5 stars. I can't give it a 5th one. I mean, I suppose I could throw in a 5th one because I said the significance of it in the history and lore of Doctor Who, but it didn't knock my socks off. So, but still, an enjoyable episode. So I do recommend it. Look into Doctor Who and the Time Meddler. For the first time, the Doctor takes on another rogue Time Lord. Yeah. Before they were Time Lords. Yeah. Before Time Lords were cool. Okay, thank you for watching and listening. Why not like and subscribe? Share it with your friends. I thank you if you already did, and I really thank you if you subscribed. Yes, I do. And if you can spare a little love, head over to those links below. That'll take you to my mini stores and buy yourself a t-shirt, a hat, some stickers, a mug, whatever. Stuff like that. It's cool, and it has my artwork on it. What a deal! It sure is. Thanks again for watching and listening. Bye-bye.